Hello, everyone, and welcome to the interview series, The Power in Your Story, where I interview entrepreneurs about their story path, their story journey of how they're doing what they're doing now and what really powers them and motivates them to serve their particular audience. And I'm Marianne, and I've had over 20 years experience in and working in the field of communication, helping people align themselves with who they really are so they can speak their truth and speak it with clarity, confidence, and of course, story, even if it's working out the inside story and the outside story, because both of them power us, sometimes to stop us from moving forward and sometimes to propel us from moving forward. So I hope you'll join me in a deep dive where we interview entrepreneurs. And today I am thrilled to be introducing you to Marita Rahlenbeck, who is, and I love this title, Soul Mentor and Keeper of the Sacred. So that is so intriguing, Marita.
Hello.
I mean, wow, what an introduction. I mean, you've got me interested. I love the soul mentor and keeper of the sacred. So just quickly, it all sounds as if you focus on what we hold dear to us and connection with our spirit. How did you come up with the title, and what is it that you do?
Well, that's an interesting story. Soul Mentor actually came to me about 12 years ago as in the third dimensional world, I was going through a rebrand and I found myself at a labyrinth, if you know what a labyrinth is, at the beginning of it. And when you walk a labyrinth at the beginning of it, you kind of set an intention, before you go do this meditation. And my intent was, well, who am I? And literally, as I took the first step onto the labyrinth, I heard Soul Mentor.
Beautiful.
And so then I got to meditate on that phrase all the way in, and then of course all the way out. So that was bestowed upon me.
Oh, it really was. And
Literally.
now I've seen labyrinths here in Europe, in churches. And so, what particular labyrinth were you walking?
There is one. There's several here in the cities. I live in the Twin Cities in Minnesota, and there's one in a northern suburb, like part of a whole community park. It's this huge, gorgeous labyrinth, and it's like a half-hour drive. But every once in a while, it's like I want to go there, so I go up there.
Lovely. So it sounds quite large, so that you can.
Yes. Yes.
It's sort of like a maze, sort of
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And so sort of people keep their distance, and it must be quite a quiet place, so you can have that reflection on.
Exactly. Yeah.
Intention.
Exactly.
Beautiful. I love that story. So, hey, we're into story already. So that was about, I think you said 13 years ago.
The rebrand?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was like in 09, 2010, something like that, where I formulated an LLC, and I just I like kicked it up a notch and went real serious. Instead of a DBA, I went LLC and kind of switched things up.
Okay. So LLC is a company. DBA is
a DBA is like Marita doing business as
like
whatever.
Self-employed.
Yes. I was like, I'm done with this, but I want to be real. I want to be
You took your step into your commitment. So how long have you been an entrepreneur, Marita?
Over 20 years.
Okay. Yeah. And before that, as I think you told me, you were in the corporate world.
Yes.
Which is often, not always, a very different world to being an entrepreneur. So what did you do, just very briefly, in the corporate role?
Nowadays I can't even believe I did it, but the teasing part of me said I would babysit men. But I typically worked for, you know, the very high VPs, presidents, CEOs, and
Okay.
I took flipping care of them. And some of them, there's a lot of ego, I think, when you get to that kind of power level. And I hated it. It's just like, it was killing me. And yeah, I just needed to not do that anymore.
So you were sort of helping them, I don't know, commit to their
Like an executive assistant. My not my last job, but the last job I really liked. I essentially ran a department of 42 engineers.
Okay.
And if you know anything about engineers, and if you know me, it's like, how did that work?
That's true. So mentor with engineers. No,
Oh my word. It was like, yeah. But a lot of the guys were fun, and a lot of them were equally nerdy. But
so you were working in that for, I guess, quite a few years.
Mhm.
And then it dawned on you, how did it dawn on you? I mean, though something must have been telling you in your head or in your intuition, this really is not for me. What's the story behind how you had the confidence to exit that world and become an entrepreneur, self-employed?
Well, I honestly, I found, and then it found Young Living essential oils. We sort of collided. And that was over 20 years ago, back in when people didn't know the magic of these little tiny bottles. And I became the teacher. I became the one doing the classes, and people calling me crazy. And, you know, now it's everybody knows what an essential, well, pretty much everybody knows what an essential oil is.
Yes.
But that was the beginning of me just doing classes and teaching, and then witnessing the incredible change that can happen when you start using these magical, like Wayne Dyer called them God drops.
Yeah.
How drastically and dramatically your life can change. And then that segued into me working more like on the emotional level. And then from there, it went to the spiritual level.
So did you find a bit of a change in you when you,
Absolutely. Yeah.
what sort of changes did you experience?
Well, I found a lot of people find Young Living because of health challenges.
Right.
They come looking for, you know, whatever their issue is. And that wasn't me. I found Young Living when I was exiting a marriage that was very, very volatile. And so for me, it was the emotional support. I didn't know it had spiritual components at the time, but it provided that gateway into an entire reality that I had never met before.
Oh,
So that's my history of not only like how I awakened in, you know, how I awakened, spiritually awakened, but the catalyst was working with these oils. And I have seen, like, the woman who is I consider her my mentor.
yes.
Um, her story is freaking phenomenal in that she had literally been told, put your affairs in order, you won't be around very long. And that was, no, she's been with the company for 25 years.
Wow.
And so the
That's,
products actually saved her life. But I have watched her and witnessed her intuitive and psychic abilities just explode over these last 20 some years that I've known her. So they're magic. They truly are magic. And every day I'm grateful for Gary Young and the gift that he gave the world by reintroducing the oils.
beautiful, beautiful. And you're right. I mean, I was into essential oils probably, a bit longer than that, but they were a lesser known thing, though they've been around for a long time. They were lesser known. And it's really interesting in your story, in your particular journey, that they started to connect you from a volatile marriage, which perhaps I'm just guessing here, and you can correct me, disconnected you sometimes from spirit, because when there's an awful lot of volatility,
Yeah.
and it, as you started to ease it your way into the essential oils, tried with whichever mixtures you did, you found that your spiritual side started to awaken as well. And it wasn't just the physical, but it was the spiritual and emotional well-being that you started to be introduced to.
Exactly.
Which is powerful, which is beautiful. So Soul Mentor it started with the labyrinth, but it also, the seeds of it started with those essential oils and the journey
Yes.
that you had. And
Yes.
I love your, and obviously your mentor's story was an amazing story. Go and get your affairs into order, so powerful, and 21 years later she's still there.
Yeah.
So yes, we can so underestimate the power of nature. It's just amazing. So I love that story, and it will definitely inspire me to go back and check, revitalize my using. I've got my essential oils, but so you forget these things. So it's great. I did put some on beforehand. Oh, dearie me. Okay, so then you moved in, you used this labyrinth, and that gave you the Soul Mentor. What led you to move from specifically essential oils to the sort of next step on your?
Well, I didn't move from the oils. I just sort of took them with me and had started doing different types of work where I mentored mostly women through change, through their divorce, through their loss of job, through their, I don't like this job, I want a new one. I mean, I started helping people, wherever they're at. And it didn't, I went from just, I'm not just doing oils and nutrition. I became far more holistic in my approach. And yeah,
your life experience really of helping through marriages or divorce, and the emotional experience that you started to experience, it gave you that background to help in a slightly more holistic way.
Right.
Cool.
Right.
Cool. Yeah. Granted, you haven't ever left your essential oils, hence the proof that you had your essential oil bottle. Right.
I have bottles all over the house. I have an app that I can log my inventory on, and one of the categories is open bottles. And I'm like, yeah, right. I'm not going to go there at all. I do want to know how many full bottles I have, but I don't want to know how many open bottles I have. I'm not going to keep track of that. Well, that's insane.
Oh, that's lovely. So even if we say yes, you kept the essential oils as part of your sort of toolkit, what was your next step? You help women sort of take with a more holistic approach to in some ways, should we say, their healing from previous experiences, whether it was work or a divorce. And is that something you're still doing? Or I know that you wrote a book.
Yeah, I really don't, I used to have a little healing space and I did all my classes, but I also did one-on-one work where I had my little massage table. I don't do massage, but I did what Young Living introduced a technique called raindrop technique.
Oh, that's nice. So, what's that, raindrop?
Raindrop technique is it's a series of oils that are applied along the spine, particularly. And so it's extremely relaxing, and it's immune enhancing, and it's so wonderful. And I combined it with something called an amethyst biomat. So it was a lot of like body work type of stuff that I did. Yes. But I also then, I added the element of like emotional support. Like as an example, I used to have a healing space that was in a larger consortium with, other practitioners. And I had, if you don't know what an amethyst biomat is, you can go to my website and look under resources and find the amethyst biomat. But so I was giving the practitioners just a little taste, like come lay on it for 10 minutes. When you start, you don't want more than 15 because it does detox. So you want to go slow. And I had told her, that I have clients that have these amazing experiences on the mat, just on the mat. And so I come back in after 10 minutes. She's like, but I didn't have an experience. And I said, well, I didn't set you up for it. I wanted you to experience the mat. I didn't set you up for like the next level because that's the different experience. Right.
Yeah.
So I went from that kind of thing. And then, I've done lots of really cool things. I moved my healing practice into my home. And then in 2014, I had a brain injury. And so honestly, since my brain injury, I haven't really done any hands-on work. I think I've only done like 1 or 2 times with one friend, as like a, let's just do this because you're suffering kind of a thing. But I haven't done anything like that in many years now.
So was that your brain injury? Was that a catalyst to have a slightly different tack in your entrepreneurial career?
I don't know. I've never thought about that. It's just the brain injury just put like life on hold for a really long time.
Yeah.
And my job became literally like, I would really like to pick up a book one day and read a paragraph and remember what I read. Wow. And I'm not exaggerating. It took me like 8 months to be able to read a paragraph and remember what I'd read. And I'm a big, ridiculous, voracious reader. So that was really painful to not be able to read.
Yes.
So
how did you heal from that?
A lot of tears, a lot of time. My weeks became a plethora of appointments. Like that's all I did. I would go to this person for that and this other person for that. And it was my job. When you meet people that like have a chronic illness or a head injury, something really serious.
Yes.
They're not kidding when they say that their job is getting well, because that you don't have time for anything else.
No, it becomes
You're exhausted,
number one priority, doesn't it?
Like even I was thinking about this the other day, there's so much construction. Oh God, I call it the season of orange, like I'm so flippin' tired of orange. Like it's either snow or orange. And when I was reflecting on this, because when I had my brain injury, like really severe, I would be driving and I'd never have my phone on. I didn't need any more distractions. And I would see a green light and I would go, green means go, green means go, green means go. And I don't know what triggered it the other day, but it was like, green means go. I think it was just too many, orange, too much distraction. It means I can go through that light,
Wow. Was that a car injury you had?
No, I fell on concrete.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
It's so difficult to imagine that something that might seem quite not very far can create so much havoc.
Exactly. And it wasn't diagnosed until weeks later when I was like, what the hell is wrong with me? Like, what is wrong with me? Wow. So
for quite a few months, if not longer, your main priority and absolute.
Oh, it was a good 18 months.
18 months, your total priority was getting back on track, getting well again.
Right.
And after about 18 months, things started to feel as if they were starting to come back to normal.
Yeah. Well, then all of a sudden, I'm picking up, like I could read a recipe on the computer and then actually do the next step. That was like a little action, right? Yeah. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, and I couldn't really be online for more than 10 minutes. So I could do nothing except sit. I could watch television, which was really weird because it uses a different part of the brain, but I couldn't listen to music unless it was classical or in another language, which is equally bizarre. Just really strange things. I remember the neurologist said, something. Oh, he said, I had 2 concussions. I had one here and one back here. And because you can just picture, right, what happened. And I go, well, what lives here? He said, language. I go, oh, that explains so much. You know, like, because it explains so much, right? Yeah, but then all of a sudden I could read again, you know, and understand. I mean, I could read. I just didn't know what the hell I read.
So that happened with all your help and the treatment after about.
Yeah, over time, I remember, I mean, I was just, oh, I was a wreck. And I just remember saying, why, you know, and she just said, your brain is broken. And that, whatever that did, it was like, oh, well, if it's broken, we can fix it.
Beautiful. That's
right.
part. If it's broken, we can fix it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And was that a bit of a turning point for you, because you could make sense of, even if you didn't understand all the moving parts, that made sense to you?
I can still, you know, given the state of my memory from back then, that I remember that was a pivotal thing.
Very powerful. Yes.
Mhm.
That helped you, gave you hope.
Yeah.
So after about 18 months, things started to come back. And what was your next point in your entrepreneurial career, your path? Did you continue to work with those ladies, or did you experience something else? Because I know you wrote a book. Was that soon afterwards or a bit later?
You know, 14, 16, oh, I don't know. The book that I wrote is the book about my kitty named Grace.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see if we can do the math. I think we can do the math. This came out October of 19.
Okay.
And I think it was it was sometime first quarter, if I'm not mistaken, of 18 that she died. So it was like really raw when I wrote this. It was like, like raw.
Mm.
So somewhere in there, my other cat died. Yeah, that's right. So I had another kitty named, I don't have a picture of her in here.
Mm.
I don't think. Oh, yes, I do. I'll go get it.
Yes.
I had another kitty.
Oh.
That is Ginger. And she died while I was still suffering from a head injury. I remember that because I got a weird phone call from, you want to hear that story? We're getting way off topic. That's fun though. So I have you know how men sometimes like to fix things even though you don't want them to,
Yeah.
or need them to. But anyway, I remember I was still really like very foggy. And I got this call from this lady, and a mutual friend of ours, a man, had like, he didn't want to accept that I had to put Ginger down. And he hired this psychic. And so I get this call from this psychic lady. My name is, and I'm like, what? Like I had no, like I could not put it in any file, right? And she's like, Ginger wants, with your permission, she wants to come back. I'm like, I had just gotten done crying, say I'm never having a cat again. You know?
Oh.
So yeah, so she died in crap 15, 16. I can't remember, you know, but anyway, we had to put her down. Huh?
But Grace came, in a sense, in her footsteps, I suppose.
Yeah, that's a whole another story that's actually in the book of how I actually found her, because that was all total intuition, guidance, all that kind of stuff. It's pretty cool. But so in all of that, you know, Grace showed up, and then she got ridiculously sick. And they gave her, what did they give her? 3 to 5 weeks. and she made it 2.5.
Oh, wow.
So it was quite intense. Another one of those nothing else matters, like, nothing else matters except you, so.
Oh, dear.
Yeah.
So what inspired you? So she died in 18 and the book came out in the autumn of 19. What inspired you to write about her? What was the message?
That's a great question, because honestly, we wrote the book together. It's very much a channeled book. It's very much a Grace and I book. In fact, in the book, you know how you read books and they talk about like characters and you don't know, like, who's that? You can't remember who that is. And so I went, I don't want that, because I mention people and I mention kitties and I have a cast of characters.
Oh, that's lovely.
So people can go, who is that? And my editor, actually, so with it next to the picture of Grace, the subject of this book, co-author and mama to Arya, she added the co-author part.
Oh.
There's pieces in here that are very much Grace's words that she wanted to change. And I'm like, no, that's a channeled piece and you can't change that, because otherwise you change the whole meaning. And, I didn't give her as much leeway as maybe she would have wanted. But yeah, so it's the story about her her struggle of letting go and accepting love, and her struggle with the more she let go, the more she wanted to stay, and as she let go, the more her body broke down. And I midwifed her to the other side. And so there's that part, but then there's also the whole grieving part, all the, like, her thing that's not unique to her, and it's not unique to a cat, right? I had the same experience February of last year, so just before COVID, everything.
Yeah.
And with my ex-husband, he was given, I don't remember I don't even know if he was given, you have this long to live. From diagnosis to death was 13 days.
Wow.
And it was the same damn thing. It was like, I am witnessing what I wrote about. I am witnessing it. The more he shared his trauma and his truth, the more his body broke down and the more he would have wanted to stay. It's crazy.
The more he shared his trauma and his truth, so going through his story, the more his body broke down, but more he wanted to stay. It's
like, here's an example.
Yeah.
Is my daughter and myself and John are in ER. He's in a bed and he's hooked up to all this stuff.
Yes.
And we're waiting for whatever. I don't even know what we're waiting for. But anyway, out of nowhere, this is a man who rarely talked about anything important. And I don't mean that, as you can hear it, it's true. It's not like a judgment. It just is.
Yeah.
And here he is, we're in ER, and I had the presence of mind to actually record on and put it on his chest.
Oh, that's wonderful.
All of a sudden, he's telling about this trauma from when he was just 2. And Elizabeth and I we're just like, and I'm still, after a year, like, holy crap. And at one point, I remember he was still in that room. And I said, do you realize that if you had told me that when we were married, we probably never would have gotten divorced? Because it answered
all the issues,
everything. It answered everything in our relationship. It healed that, and it healed Elizabeth and her dad. And now he was at a point, you can just imagine, right? Oh my God, I revealed my deepest, darkest secret. And she said this, and she said, I love you. And what would life be like now?
Oh my goodness. Yes, I'm with
right?
you. He's finally had the courage to say this story And then he gets an unexpected result, which is so powerful, so magical. And then he thinks, oh, wow.
And the look on his face when I said that to him was
Oh,
literally like, oh shit. Like,
oh,
oh, this, oh my God, you mean I could have trusted you with that?
yes.
Like, you know, that's kind of what you do in a marriage. You trust. So it was crazy because I had honestly been wondering, and I had reached out to people that I knew had lost a parent or a loved one.
Yes.
And like, would you read my book and tell me how it could fit in, like for a death doula to use as a tool, for instance?
Yes.
But now I'm living it. I don't need to know that it's relevant. It is relevant.
You've
This book is
experienced it
relevant.
firsthand. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's just so powerful, such powerful story. And so now that book is for sale, and people can have the opportunity themselves to read it and make those links.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Is lovely. And I know that it's hard to move on from such a powerful story. That is an amazing, powerful story, particularly about story and the fears that we have of holding on to things that we can feel ashamed of, embarrassed, and yet they can eat us up.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
make us behave in ways that we don't necessarily mean to, but we do. It's a very powerful story, and thank you so much for telling us that.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that you've done some work with people in grief and grief work, but that somehow you moved on as well from that. So you still incorporated, I get the feeling, and I get the feeling from so many people I talk to, that you never really let go of the experiences and the skills that you've picked up on your entrepreneurial path and your story path, but it just evolves into a slightly different picture that aligns more with yourself. And so
Right.
what is that now?
Which iteration am I on? Well, like you said, I feel that as we evolve, our work evolves. And for the most part, what we gather and what helped create who we are, it becomes something in our arsenal. Like I mentioned when we were chatting earlier, is like, just because I'm not actively doing grief work
Yes.
doesn't mean I don't do grief work. It's just like,
Yes.
it's in a different form. What I'm working on right now is honestly something really, really exciting. And it's really about empowering, particularly the woman, empowering women to uncover the qualities within that we as a result of society and messaging, we've hidden. We don't even know that we've hidden. It's just like, what? That's in here somewhere. So, and I mean, I actually talk about her as a being because she is a being that we all have access to.
Yeah.
And I call her the quintessential woman. And I had been, the story behind that is I had this feeling like for days, like something was just wanting to, I didn't use the term birth itself, but that's what happened. But there was something that was just, it was like so damn close and it wouldn't drop in. And after whatever, 3 or 4 days, I finally, on a Friday afternoon, I grab my laptop and I sit down, I go, okay, whatever this is right now, we're going to do this. And I just got quiet and I typed out the most gorgeous poem prose ever. And it didn't get a revision. It's actually on a website right now where you can read it. And I believe it's the beginning of a movement that I'm going to be leading. And that's pretty bold for me to say. The movement of giving a space to women to find their true self, not who their culture or society or ancestral or family of origin say they are, but who is Mary Ann, right? And who, you know, who are you as the listener to this or the watcher of this? Who are you? And she hasn't really, at this juncture, she hasn't really told me or showed me what that's going to look like. But I know that's going to be ridiculously important, not only for my business, but for humanity.
That sounds
To
beautiful.
add it into the, you know, into the consciousness and allow us to thrive, allow the women to thrive.
Allow us to thrive. I think that's a beautiful note to finish off. And I hope you can see how powerful that story, well, all of the stories were so, so powerful. I particularly love that story about your ex-husband, because it really encapsulates what I've been helping people with for years, is the stories within will drive the stories without. And we don't always know, guys, we don't always know what it is that's been implanted vicariously by other people, and we're often running on those systems, and they're not necessarily us, and we're not always aligned to ourselves. We don't always recognize ourselves. We don't always speak our truth. And I think you can see from Marita's face, she shone. There was some light, there was some passion. So it feels as if Marita's taken this story journey. She's had some signposts. Everything, none of it's been a waste of time. It's all fueled into her experience. But now she feels quite passionate that there's something that lights her up and is really going to be of value to other people, and she's going to be a service to other people, and it's just music to my ears to hear that. So Marita, I know that I'm going to get some details from you of the link to Grace and your website, and I will put them in the show notes.
Great.
And guys, thank you, of course, for listening. And I hope you'll see there were some beautiful, beautiful, powerful stories that sometimes I all had to avoid, you know, the tears streaming down my eyes, because they're so poignant. And it's wonderful to hear the power of other people's stories, because they reach us, they touch our hearts, and they give us that hope that, well, maybe something similar, I can evolve, I can get in touch with myself. And so telling you about other people's stories, but also your story, is so powerful. It is so much more powerful than often you give yourself credit for. There's so much experience, there's so much wisdom. And if you're interested in finding out a bit more, in getting started, in playing around with using story when speaking, I'll also drop a link into the show notes. It's a self-paced course that can get you started, give you some ideas. And there is, I think, nothing more healing, nothing more powerful than story. It is part of our ethos, part of our core center, and part of our ancestry and our future. Marita, thank you so much for joining us.
This was wonderful. Thank you.
I was thrilled. I did know Marita before, but all of these things I did not know. So, and I hope you are too. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you in the next video. Take care. Thanks, Marita.
Bye.